the cello! Go, Red, go! Go, Red, go! See that kick?
I saw it, but I don't believe it!
I'll call it the Pele! My gosh! Folks, you're not going to believe it next week. We're going to have the greatest show you've ever seen. You're going to see blood, guaranteed. Blood as red as my shirt!
That is a great point.
Thank you, sir. I still love your nose.
I see that.
Mike, while you're in ass-kissing mode, why don't you kiss Sting's ass as well?
Excuse me?
Right into the food table! Oh, that's great! Planning on that for supper! You got to be freaking kidding!
I guess before we get into the episode itself, this is the first time we've recorded the main show since the passing of Don West. The tragic news that hit right at the end of the year, I think it was December 30th. Of course, this show named after the iconic "You've Got to Be Kidding Me" call of Don West, which Tom Hannafin paid tribute to actually over the weekend at Hard to Kill. If you watch Josh take that big bump off the ladder, there's a "You've Got to Be Kidding Me." There's actually two of them.
I guess before we delve into why we like Don West, it was very heartwarming to see all of the people that he's worked with come out and say such nice words about him.
Yeah, it's said often like a guy nobody had a bad word to say about, but it really seems to be true of Don West that not a person on earth had a bad word to say about him.
Everyone that he worked with seemed to come away from working with him with nothing but pleasant experiences, which is a rare thing.
Yeah, there's a full show on the Wrestling Observer feed with Mike TNA. I think it's free as well. I don't think it's for subscribers.
I believe it is free.
Where it's just an hour of him and Dave and the Garrett I resent in the wrestling for no other reason than he's pushing into my Garrett SEO. And other people are like mentioning other Garrett. It's like Garrett and Dave. It's like, me? It's like, no, the other Garrett. God damn it. But there's a lovely 1 hour episode with Mike TNA just sharing memories of Don West and memories of calling shows with Don West. And it's not really about Don West, the wrestling commentator. It's obviously more about Don West, the person, the human being, the man. And it's lovely to hear those perspectives. But yeah, I honestly didn't expect WWE even to say anything, and it was very nice that they did a shout out on SmackDown. Like AEW did the graphic. Impact obviously did a 10 bell salute before Hard to Kill, as well as a video package on it. It's just nice. Like we talked about a few, probably 10 episodes back at this stage, about how Don West really wasn't appreciated in his time. Like he got an unnatural amount of hate for a guy who was, as we covered on this show, by 2003 already a good announcer.
Yeah, I don't get it because we're in the years now where he was getting that kind of backlash, and I couldn't even imagine having those feelings because I think he's I don't even have moments where I think he's bad.
No,
I think he's always consistently good, and when he's at his best, he adds to everything. I like the kind of hybrid of Mike Tenay's analytical style, and then Don West brings the emotion to it, and I think that's a great combination. I couldn't imagine watching this and going away with the take that this guy's not good at what he's doing.
Yeah, because I always the Wrestling Observer Awards are the good encapsulation of how people felt in the moment. And Mike TNA won Announcer of the Year for the first 4 years of TNA history, and Don ranked among worst announcers in I think every year, and even won it in 2007. And it just truly boggles my mind that people saw those two sitting next to each other. As you said, a perfect professional wrestling announce team, where Don brings the energy, the enthusiasm, Tenay brings the knowledge and the ability to call moves and bring that extra historical context. They perfectly cover off each other's shortcomings. They make the person next to them better. Tenay was never as good an announcer with Taz as he was with Don West, and I think very, very highly of Mike Tenay. But that's an indisputable fact. He was a better announcer with Don West next to him than he was with Taz, and some of that is because he was calling a better product. But even that, some of the product was terrible in 07, 08, and he still was a better announcer with Don West next to him. Don West made the guy better because Don West was great at his job. There's the historical record has thankfully been corrected, I think, over the last 5 years in particular, as all of the crazy moments that we've covered, like the Elix Skipper cage walk, like all of that stuff. like when people watch that and just see the Don West reaction and hear the Don West reaction and realize he elevated that. He made it better because he was damn good at his job. And it does warm my heart that they didn't get the love they deserved at the time. Well, TNA did. Don West didn't. And over time, that did correct itself.
And I think we see a lot of it personally just from posting Impact clips to the Twitter account. You'll get so many people going, wow, Don West was so great. What a call by Don West. Mike Tenay and Don West are so good together on like all of these clips that we post. So you can tell that like people now perhaps separated from the product at the time, because maybe that was some of it. They were projecting their views of the product onto Don West at times. And maybe now that there's some space between the product and the person, that they're able to just acknowledge how good he was. But the thing I enjoy the most about Don West is I felt like from 2002 to now, we got to see someone and hear someone, more appropriately, fall in love with pro wrestling. And I think that is such an interesting dynamic to see on a product like this, and something that I don't think you've ever I don't think that's ever happened before, where you've been able to see someone become a fan of pro wrestling through being a part of the show. And I just think that's so interesting. That's so compelling, and I just got to give props to that, because that's a really fun thing to be able to do.
Yeah, and I think that's maybe part of the reason people didn't like him, that it was a little gatekeeping-y, that like he wasn't a wrestling fan. He knew like the broad strokes of wrestling, but he was never like a big wrestling guy. He wasn't even like a television sports announcer. He came from the world of selling stuff on the Shop at Home network. So I think there was a little bit of people that expected him to be terrible. And I don't even think he was ever terrible. Like, even when you listen to the early shows, he's very excitable, and it's a very different kind of announcing, but I never thought he detracted from the show. Like, when he's going nuts over like basic wrestling moves, it does make the basic wrestling moves seem cooler at the very least. It doesn't detract from the show that he's like, I've just seen a Hurricane Rana, and that is the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life.
No, it adds to it.
Like that, and that, like, there is an earnestness to it. There is a sincerity to it, because I think that the big point of comparisons people have drawn for like the influence of Don is Pat McAfee. And for me, the big difference is Pat feels like he's performing, and he is. Like, he's performing that enthusiasm. He's going out there and he's performing being like that high energy. And I think that's just who Don was, which I think made Don stand out all the more. That like, he's not doing an act. He's not playing a role. He is going out there and he is sincerely, enthusiastically enjoying the things he's calling. And as I said, that just elevates it.
Don West felt genuine. And that's something that, like, you can't really recreate. I also watched his, like, heel turn the other day.
Oh, it's great.
And I was sitting there and I was like, man, this guy would have been a tremendous manager too.
Because he did the babyface managing act with Red, which was like, he only did it for a couple months because it's one of those things that got lost in the shuffle as Hogan and Bischoff came in, because he did it toward the end of 2009. And I thought that like there was so much potential in that act as a babyface. But as you said, like, he did that heel turn, and I'm excited to listen back to like full shows of heel Don, because I actually think he was really good in that role too. Like, there's a whole bit he does where he is trying to prove that Christopher Daniels is suicide, and it's sensational stuff. And like, my favorite Don West call during the heel run is he tries to argue in the Steel Asylum match with the big red bars that Amazing Red has an unfair advantage in that match because he blends in with the red bars. And like, that is just tremendous. He was so good at his job. And I'm very glad that people have increasingly seen that in recent years, and we've seen the outpouring of support and love for Don. And like, going back to those early shows where he'd do those big pitches where they would like just set a minute and a half aside and say, Don, sell next week's show. And the card would be a bit shit. It would be like, oh, you get the Harris Bros in a first blood match. And you're like, Don West would talk people into the building just based on those like average early NWA-TNA cards. And that's what he did best. He was a salesman, and he sold professional wrestling like few else. And like, if you want to like do the math on who has drawn the most money in the history of TNA wrestling, Don's probably like top 5.
Especially if you include the merch stuff in.
Yeah, when you think about all the merch stuff, all the brown bag, all of that, like who made this company most money? Don is up there. Don is like one of the people in the history of TNA that has made TNA the most money.
Yeah, he's great. And it's nice that the public perception is coming around to that too.
So yeah, rest in peace, Don. You will be dearly, dearly missed. I have my Don micro brawler in my desk, which has been here for like 6 months. And I just saw it like I forgot it was there. And I was recording the link to the cast Game of the Year a couple hours after the announcing of his passing came out. And I just saw it on my desk. And then I nearly cried because it's like, oh, Don's just there. And I said, he's in the logo of our show because the show is based on his catchphrase. And yeah, rest in peace, Don.
The rest of the Link to the Cast podcast is like, man, Garrett's getting really emotional about Elden Ring winning Game of the Year.
Yeah, because we were sitting down to do the actual Game of the Year part because we'd done all the other categories at that stage. So we were doing like the actual Game of the Year category, which ended up being like 3.5 hours. And yeah, it was like 2 hours after, having to draft all the tweets and stuff like that about Don. And it's like, I gotta drag myself together to actually do 3 hours of unrelated podcasting at the moment.
Well, it being unrelated probably helped.
Yeah.
To focus on something completely different from wrestling.